What if the monster didn't die? What if after the smoke cleared and the villagers went home, the story of Frankenstein had one more terrifying heartbeat left? That's exactly where James Whale takes us in 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein, a sequel that doesn't just reanimate the monster, it reanimates the entire genre. This isn't your typical follow-up. It's weirder, wilder, and smarter, equal parts horror and dark comedy, all wrapped in gothic style and electricity. Boris Karloff gives the monster a soul. Elsa Lanchester gives the bride a legend, and Whale, well, he gives us one of the most striking films of the decade. So light the candles and clear the lab table, because tonight we bring the Bride of Frankenstein to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cinema 100, and this is the Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, sir, she's gone! The monster! He's got her!
Where's the pepper and salt? We've got no pepper and salt. Ladies and gentlemen, Will and I sat down and watched 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein, which is a sequel to the 1931, just titled Frankenstein by James Whale. And he also did this one as well. So I'm excited to dive in to this with Will as always. But as always, we have our horror extraordinaire experience, our aficionado here, David Rudy Garrett, the podcast host of Journey with a Cinephile, and also Depth Dive with his wife, Jamie Frisch Garrett as well. So welcome, gentlemen, to what's going to be, I think, a extraordinarily thought-provoking episode of Cinema 100, because I'm kind of shocked by how many themes this hour and 15-minute runtime movie, Bride of Frankenstein, dives into. So with that being said, Dave, how many times have you seen The Bride of Frankenstein?
I was actually thinking about this earlier. This is probably like my fourth or fifth time seeing this one. I know I watched it originally right after college. I think I've seen it in the theater once, and then I watched it earlier this year as I kind of run through years ended in five. So this is one that I knew I had seen before, so I just did a rewatch of it.
Yeah, so where are you at now in the peaks and valleys of when it comes to listening to songs over and over again, or rewatching a movie over and over again? Are we at like a peak again? Are we like, okay, it's come back around, the dip is gone, it's not as boring as, and we're excited for it? Or are you in the middle of a dip where you're like, please, nobody else asked me to rewatch this movie?
This one I will say is a little bit easier to rewatch just because it is only an hour and like 15 minutes. So it's always easier when it's a short runtime. And to kind of switch it up, since I have this on DVD, there was a commentary that I listened to just so that way it's better sometimes to like for me doing a rewatch to do something like that because at least it's breaking it up so it's not the same thing that I'm watching over again. And if you have a good person doing a commentary, there's some interesting insights that I probably would have never have known that kind of adds something to it as well.
Yeah, and I kind of buried the lead here a little bit, but our boy Will got this puppy on 4K Blu-ray to add to his collection. So I'm assuming he watched this the DVD as well. Will, am I correct to say that?
Yeah, yep. I definitely was able to watch it on the 4K.
Nice.
Was it everything you wanted it to be?
Yeah, so actually, interesting enough, it looked really good. But when I watched about a half hour of the kind of extras afterwards, just to kind of get a feel for what everyone was thinking about film historians and such, because they have a bunch of people on there kind of talking about the history of the film. And they were showing footage as they were talking about the film, and it was in standard definition. So it was interesting to kind of see some of that, like right after I just got done watching it in 4K. So.
Yeah, that is interesting. Let's dive into the movie, guys. Let's give the deets, as the kids say. General info here. The movie we watched was Bride of Frankenstein, release date April 22nd, 1935. The tagline is, Mary Shelley reveals the main characters of her novel survived. Baron Henry Frankenstein, goaded by an even madder scientist, builds his monster a mate. Directed by James Whale, distributed by Universal Pictures, runtime of an hour and 15 minutes, starring. Now, I gave quite a few people here billing. I didn't think I would when I originally got this, but they spread the love out quite a bit in this movie, almost in like each duet gets a certain act almost. You know what I mean? Like you talked about it,
Mhm.
Will, off camera, but the Bride of Frankenstein doesn't actually have but maybe 3 to 4 minutes of runtime in this movie, which begs the question: is this appropriately titled? I don't know. We'll get to that in a little bit. With all that being said, here's the cast. Boris Karloff returns as Frankenstein monster. Colin Clive returns as Baron Henry Frankenstein. However, we do get a different Elizabeth Frankenstein. We get a Valerie Hobson in this time go around. The other time was originally was May Clark. That stood out to me right away. I had to Google that right away. I was like, that does not look like the same lady. And maybe Dave, you'll be able to lend to us here in a second why that was the case. Ernest Thesiger played Dr. Pretorius, and Elsa Lanchester played Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, aka Monster's mate. Now, Will,
Yeah.
did you know that the Mary telling the story in the beginning was also the mate at the end of the movie?
Yes, not beforehand, though, if
Okay.
that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
So
I
not
didn't know that
beforehand.
either. I didn't know that either until we got to the end, and I was like, oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Dave, why did May Clark not make her return to play Elizabeth? Is it because the role really, you could argue who has more screen time, Elizabeth or the monster's mate here? She's not on it a lot. Is that why? Or what was the purpose here? What was the reason?
I actually think they bring this up in the commentary that I listened to. I believe she didn't like the script. So I don't think she wanted to come back. And actually, interesting enough, in that they also talked about Valerie Hobson was 17 years old when she played this role in this movie.
She looks 37 years old. That's
People aged
incredible.
differently back then, man.
Wow. 17 years old. That's
She
crazy.
looks
Well,
17 to me, Robert, but I was watching in 4K, so
yeah, I was having a hard time trying to figure out which one was the monster. No, I'm joking. Letterbox rating is 4.0. However, the critics love this movie. 98% on Rotten Tomatoes to an 87% by the audience. Still really strong numbers there,
Mhm.
but 98% by the critics is something to look at. I don't remember, Will, do you remember what the original Frankenstein's critical score was?
not off the top of my head. I've got it on the same document here though, so I could probably track that down if you've got some filler.
Yeah, as Will checks that out, Dave, does that shock you by any means? Just compared to the first one, as we get those numbers, does it shock you that a sequel has this strong of numbers from the critics?
I mean, just for the fact that it is a sequel a little bit, but this one is pretty universally liked more than the original in even the horror community. That there is more people that find this one to be more interesting.
Really? Okay. And that is because it does have a higher letterbox rating than
Hmm.
the original, which is fascinating as well. I say fascinating, but I got to be honest. I've never really bought into this narrative that sequels are usually worse than the
Hmm.
original. I find, especially in franchises, like if we put a franchise, which I usually think is three, right? At least
Hmm.
three. Okay. I usually find that the second movie is the most exciting movie. I find that in the case of your depth dive when it looks at the Pirates of the Caribbean. I
Yep,
personally love Dead Man's Chest. Uh,
agreed.
the Dark Knight sequel, American Pie 2 sequel. I mean, all these sequels, right? I
Empire
think
Strikes Back.
Empire
Yep.
Strikes Back, if you look at that in just two
Hmm.
different or three different sets of three. Um, I find that the sequel is the most exciting, and the reason I do, and one of the things I wanted to talk about, is one thing that gives these sequels a chance to be better movies than its predecessor is because we already know the world we're supposed to live in,
Hmm.
the rules to play by, and that allows for the story to pick up faster.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree with my sentiment that sequels, I think, are better? In a set of a franchise, or are you guys still like the roots in the original story? Will, I'll give it to you because you kind of have a smirk on your face.
I do. I'm just, I immediately thought of this uh experiment we did in high school. I can't remember exactly what class it was for, but it was like just I was talking to people and they would be like, I know a bunch of left-handed people. Like they would name off like 7 or 8 people they know that are left-handed. And then I'm like, so everyone else you know is right-handed, right? That's kind of how I feel about what you're saying here, right? You've got a bunch of great examples of the sequel that's better than the original,
Hmm.
but what about all the other sequels, right? What about all those other sequels like that come up and you're just like, why did they make this, right?
Hmm.
I'm having trouble coming up with an example, ironically. But yeah, I'm just kind of thinking if maybe that's kind of what's happening here is you've got a bunch of great examples of that great sequel, and really in reality, the sequel's usually a little bit worse.
Well, I tend to think when you don't get the third, that's the thing, right? Like Dumb and Dumber 2. That makes sense. That movie did not work as well as the first one. But if you get a third one, it's because the second one was so good. So you're right. I mean, there are probably a lot more cases where the sequel kills maybe the opportunity at a franchise because it wasn't as good or didn't live up to it, or maybe it was made too late, or in the case of Dumb and Dumber, it was just too many years later. We just don't really want to see an old Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels talking out their ass or things of that nature. I still do, but I can still look at it and say that this wasn't as good as the original one. So, Dave, what do you think about that?
Well, the one thing you sometimes run into is like taking like Star Wars and Pirates as like two like ones to look at here. They originally, or I mean, Star Wars isn't a great example here, but Pirates originally was going to be just a standalone movie, made money hand over fist. So they decided they were going to do a second and third one. I think it's better sometimes if you know you're going to get that third one, no matter what, that you can kind of play a little bit more in that world, kind of what you're talking about. And the middle one tends to be the better one because that's where you almost ended on a bleaker ending. So that way the fans are kind of like they're hooked. They want to see what's going to happen, how you come back. And for me, a lot of times that third one doesn't always live up to the expectations because they left me on such a great ending previously that when we get to that next one, I'm like, okay, you resolved everything well, but I still don't feel as excited as I did when I left the previous movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I
that's
just don't.
the.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Will.
I was just going to say that's the Infinity War and Endgame problem for
Mm,
Avengers, right? Infinity War is, like, I think, the best superhero movie ever made, and
mm.
Endgame just has that problem where they're resolving all the issues. They get the essentially the happy ending. So that
Yeah.
middle one, that second one, they always have a little bit of wiggle room to leave you on that cliff, waiting for what comes next. So
Yeah, and I kind of just feel like we're just they're in a tough spot because whenever you're telling a story, so like if you think of franchises, let's take Dune for example, right? I just did not love Dune 1. I just didn't. There was things about it, elements of it that were, exciting. I found the world to be different. I was like, this is great. I seen the original one, which I didn't love the original one too, but in this sense, I can respect all the things that people love about it, but like the story to me and the pacing of it, I didn't love. That being said, I did watch Dune 2 and I thought this was a much better movie. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that I know there's a Dune 3, right? So you're catching these movies, these sequels, a lot of times, at least in my argument, when you know there's three movies, it's almost better if you know there's a third one coming
Mm.
because they're going to leave that cliffhanger, which leaves you more excited for that third movie. I just don't think any third movie can really live up to a sequel, so to speak, because we're in the middle of the action. You know what I mean? Like there's foreplay, there's the middle, and then there's the end. Foreplay in the end obviously are not nearly as good as the middle. In the middle, you're like, holy crap, I'm doing this thing right now. It's exciting. And then after that, you're like, all right, that was awesome. But like, it's just not the same feeling. It's something different. So I just think they're almost handcuffed by the nature of how three-act story structures
Mm.
work. And in the case of three movies, you kind of have act one as your first movie, act two,
Mm.
and then act three. So um, interesting though. Now, this one as a one-off though, I do think we get to the action a lot faster, which does
Mm.
make this movie, even though it's only an hour and 15, it makes it kind of fly by.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Will? Did you enjoy the pacing of this movie? Did it ebb and flow and slow down for you? Because it does slow down a little bit, but I thought it started off pretty
yeah,
pretty quick.
yeah, no, I thought pacing was great, except for the little bit that my biggest complaint. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here, or maybe I'm getting ahead of us. But the biggest complaint I have is the between the jail scene and when he meets the blind man. That
Mm.
whole that just felt a little monotonous. That's the only time the movie really drags, though. Everything else is very well paced, I thought.
No, that's a good point because I kind of felt similar. Let's get to the second part of our stuff that we normally talk about here. So we've given you critic ratings and we've given you the Rotten Tomatoes. Will, what'd you rate this as?
I've got this somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5. I can't quite make up my mind. I feel like a rewatch is warranted here because I think the reason why I'm leaning towards 4 is because I was expecting more The Bride. right? I was
Hmm.
expecting more of the mate. And because I didn't get that, I was kind of waiting for her to get on screen, and it kind of left me wanting more, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you come back to this and think of it more as like Frankenstein 2, I wonder how that kind of approach to watching the film makes it a better movie. So
Mhm.
Dave, what do you know about public reception of this movie? I know critics loved. I'm originally like the
Mhm.
original 1935 going audience. Were they left upset only getting 3-4 minutes of a Bride of Frankenstein, or were they kind of like, the movie itself was still good? Were they satisfied with what they got? What do you know about it?
I'm not sure about the if they were let down that you really only got her at the end. I do know for the most part though, Universal was notorious for this for a lot of their movies, especially earlier on, where you would literally build up to seeing this monster, then you'd get it, and then it would just kind of end. And it's from there that they started to go away from that formula in like the 40s, where they would give it to you much earlier on to help play with that a little bit more. I actually do think this did very well though, because this one got greenlit almost immediately for the next sequel, almost on the heels of this coming out.
Okay, so this is interesting. So there is a third installment of this story. Now, when I say
Oh
that,
yeah.
I mean of these original cast of characters, not like a remake coming. I'm sure there's been 20 different versions of this, or
Oh, there's so many that yeah, it's
extensions of the original, cast, creative thinking, whatever. How many were there as far as sequels?
there was five
Oh my God.
Frankenstein films that Universal did. And then he also started to cross over where there is Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And that started to be kind of like the Avengers, like mashup things where you'd get Dracula was involved as well. And then he also, with the other monsters, met Abbott and Costello, was like the last one that they did for his run.
Come on, Dave. Yeah, they had so much credibility until you just did that.
Which is kind
Uh,
of funny to me, though, is that everybody complains about sequels and franchises. I mean, Universal's been doing it since the 30s. So,
oh my God. Um, so when you say there's been five and you say he, are you talking about James Whale? Are
no,
you
this was his last one. He didn't even want
Who's
to do
he?
this one. James
Boris
Whale didn't want to
Karloff?
do this one, but Universal is who I was talking about. They did all of these. I know Karloff comes back for at least one more, and I bela Lugosi actually takes on the role of the monster at some point as well, but I don't know if it's 4 or 5 that he does that.
Interesting. What's that like? Just in a quick take
Oh,
versus
he's actually
Karloff.
really good because he is at first in the movie is like a hunchback who is talking to the mad scientist about wanting to help with the experiment, and he offers his brain to get put into the monster. And then he ends up having his brain to
Oh,
be able to think inside of a monster. So you have this guy who's diabolical now with like an indestructible body.
interesting. Interesting. Um, so it's fair to say then with these original Henry Clive, or I'm sorry, Colin Clive, James Whale, Boris Karloff, this was kind of like it, right? And then you start losing it, at least
Yeah.
sections of it. So as far as this is the
Yep.
two movies where we had that. Okay. Interesting, interesting. Um, we get 3 minutes or 4 minutes, Will, of the Bride of Frankenstein. Um, but we get a hell of a lot of Frankenstein.
Yep.
More than we got in the original, right? Which the original teases what is he going to look like? What's the noises, sounds, the movements, all these things. What's his size? We get all that in the first movie, but we get it, you know, in the middle to end of that movie as well. But we get a little bit more than 3 to 4 minutes. But in this movie, they just show you all his imperfections. You get to hear every sound he ever makes. I think he was inspired by like starting up a weed eater, for his monster sound. Um, but that's kind of what we get. Is it like, are we just over Frankenstein and therefore the allure of him is gone? Or is it more impactful because they kind of know what he is now and they know what works with him versus what doesn't? Where are you at with, already seeing him in the light, almost like the light was on him the whole time?
I thought it worked really well, honestly, because if they had done too much more of what they did in the first film, kind of like implicitly, like you can tell he's got human emotions, and he doesn't know how to execute on those. If they would have just kept doing that the whole film, it would have probably felt a little worn by the end. But by the time you get to the blind man, I think you're in the best part of the movie where you're getting him his human experiences and him starting to understand like what he's feeling. He's putting words to his actions. So
Yeah.
if we had gotten too much more of that, just the sounds and just him kind of being guttural, I think we would have probably gotten a little worn out by that. So
Guttural is a good word.
Mhm.
I wanna I'm excited to talk about the cabin scene with the blind man. I wanna kind of harness that and put it to the side just for a little bit because I think it's the most intriguing part of the whole movie. Um, Dave, what'd you rate this movie? What would you give it or rank this movie? Rate.
Uh, I think as of I've kind of settled down on this one being like a 4 out of 5 for me, like about that 8 out of 10 range right there.
Okay, I'm at a 4 as well. Um, let's do modern day recast. So I only did two. I just did the Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. Um, I can't remember if we were doing modern day recast. I don't think we were in 1931 yet. Well, I think we introduced this in 1933.
yeah.
So we didn't get a chance to really do this. Dave, did you get the format and follow along how we do things on the show here? Like, did you do a modern day recast?
Um, I'll try to think of one offhand. I
Okay.
know you guys did. I've been thinking about it since yesterday, though, when I was watching this.
Okay, so Will, the floor is yours. I'm excited about my Frankenstein answer. I'm excited about my answers. You
Yeah,
tell me, Will, who is your Frankenstein?
I'm just gonna be honest. I'm cheating a little bit because I just think it's already been perfectly cast. Maggie Gyllenhaal is making a film in
Mhm.
2 years called The Bride, and Christian Bale is playing the monster, and I just think that's perfect. Um, and then Jessie Buckley is playing the bride. So
Oh.
I just think that she kind of already nailed it. So I was a little lazy and just went with that.
That's interesting. God, man, I didn't know. I guess I didn't realize that Christian Bale was doing that. I'm not sure how that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it moves me one way or the other. Christian Bale. What about Christian Bale being Frankenstein? And I love Christian Bale. I'm
Yeah.
not sure I see him in this role. What about it for you, Will? Excites you about him being Frankenstein?
Well, this it's not going to be. It's taking place in a little bit more modern times. It's supposed to be like 1930 Chicago. So my
Mm.
guess here is he's kind of been on the run for several decades. And he's, finally getting to the spot where he realizes that he needs a mate. He needs someone that he can live his life with. And because there's all of this extra time kind of built, you have to assume that he's also been kind of learning a lot as he goes. So I feel like Christian Bale has that. I don't know. I'm thinking of like American Psycho. I'm thinking of his ability to kind of warp
Hmm.
into other people. The Machinist kind of
Adapt.
comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got him like thinking of him in some of his earlier roles, being able to kind of tap into something different that we haven't seen in a while is intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's almost like you're looking forward to the other side of Frankenstein, the monster, like, the Bruce Wayne version of Frankenstein before he turns into the Frankenstein at night. Um, my names are this. You tell me. I killed it. I think I killed it here. Javier Bardem
Okay.
as your
Oh.
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Dude, I can't unsee it now. When I thought of him from No Country for Old Men and the bull, kind of the cut,
Yeah.
I can't not see Frankenstein the monster there. And then I did get a little lazy and went with Helena Bonham Carter for Bride of Frankenstein. She
Mm.
just feels that part to me, so I went that route. But she's definitely not 19 years of age. She would be this would be an older version, as Will said. They're down the road. He's been on the run. This is probably 1950s suburbia, but. Anyways, Dave, was that enough time for you to at least half bullshit
Well,
your way through this part of
well, I
it, or
also
you want
wanted
us
to
to move on?
I wanted to bring up actually in '94, Helena Bonham Carter plays the Bride of Frankenstein in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein that has Robert De Niro as the monster, and it was directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Man, I'm not surprised. I felt
Yeah.
like it was like right in her world, so I'm
She
not
does a very
surprised
good
by that.
job, and she was very earlier in her career when she did that, I believe. But I was actually kind of looking up some things because the monster kind of is tallish. I would actually go Kevin Durand as being the
Kevin
monster.
Durant?
Durand.
Oh, okay.
He was in I think he's in Smoking Aces.
Yeah.
He's a real tall, dumb guy.
Oh, I
who's
love that guy.
he
Yeah.
would be a fun Frankenstein, especially because I think he could do the guttural sounds and
Mhm.
kind of walking
Is that
around
the
and being.
sorry, is that the same guy as are you real tall dumb guy? Is that the same guy that does all the chimpanzee Planet of the Apes? Like he plays the
Mm.
chimps, you know what I'm talking about? Is that him?
Oh no, that is Oh, I know
Andy
who you're talking.
Circus.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'll have to look him up, but keep going.
Didn't get anybody yet for the bride though, but I mean, you have Helena Bonham, I think would actually be still interesting to do even at an older age for that role still.
All right, let's move on. I really liked my Javier Bardem one. He doesn't look to you guys like Frankenstein a little bit, little
He
bit.
would do good.
So he
Yeah,
would do great. Yeah.
I think he would. Okay, let's talk about James Whale. So we've spoken about him and
Mhm.
his kind of his what do they call it? His career retrospective a little bit, Will, when we talked about Frankenstein. I alluded to this on our last episode when we did the draft episode, Will, about the subtext of the LGBTQT community here, about how he was privately open gay man in his circles. Dave, I'm excited to have you on. I want you to lend whatever you can to this. I'm going to read something. I got to be honest with you, though. I feel like this is one of those things where maybe historians look like learn
Mhm.
something after the fact and try to connect things that might not be there.
Mhm.
Okay. You tell me, Dave, what you know on this topic and what you agree with. So this is basically what I found online. So director James Whale, who was openly gay, subtly infused the film with queer subtext, themes of unnatural creation, dual identities, and societal rejection can be interpreted through an LGBTQ plus lens, with characters like Pretorius being coded as flamboyant or subversive to traditional norms. I got to be honest with you. He was a mad scientist. I didn't get an over the top anything here. I didn't feel like there was a lot of subtext here. Dave, before you speak on what you know, I want to get Will's
Mhm.
take on what he thought because we talked about this a little bit last week.
Yeah. Well, there's one line in there. I think it's is it I think Minnie is the character,
She does
the
say
kind of
queer.
weird woman. She's calls him queer at some point. And that's not a like a one for one
Yeah.
comparison from the time period. Queer can mean a lot of things at that time. But I do think that if you're going with the idea of subtext, by using words that can kind of live in both of those,
Mhm.
ideas, live in, being queer or being strange, like if it using that kind of language allows you to, you know, question whether or not he's actually doing something with that. So
Mhm.
I think there's a little bit there. It's also 1935, so he's pretty strange character for 1935, one of the stranger ones we've seen. So, there's definitely something there. I don't know how strongly you can read into it though.
Do you believe he's any more, let's use the word flamboyant because that's the one that I, found on the internet here. Do you believe he's any more flamboyant than the Henry Frankenstein character when he's, feeling good and, he's like when his lab experiments are working to his favor and he kind of transforms from Henry Frankenstein, the man that knows what he's doing is wrong, to Dr. Frankenstein of like the adrenaline rush. Like, do you believe he's any more flamboyant, Pretorius character than Dr. Frankenstein is? Um, Maybe when they're not in the lab. I guess because outside of that one line, because I caught that too,
Yeah.
and it does lend itself some credibility because I agree with you. I'm not sure that outside of that I saw anything else. Dave, what do you know on this? What do you think? What do you feel? Is this new information to you? Are we dead wrong? What do you know?
Um, I mean, I never really picked up on it until this time. Now, that historian did also bring that up as well, that the Dr. Pretorius character was supposed to be. And I guess there was a novelization that was writ kind of after the fact that leans more into it. Now, it does sound like there was a lot of things that were cut because I think the original version of this movie was like an hour and a half, I think. So they lost about 13 to like 15 minutes of footage. So there could have been more of that stuff that ended up not getting past the censorship. But I did kind of pick up this time that, and I took it more as that's just the actor of like Ernest Thesiger, just the way he is, because he does play it like what I kind of thought of was in The Crypt when he's very just kind of how he says certain things to people and just comes across that way. That it just to me that is more just how he was, and I don't know if that actor was a member of that community or not, but I do kind of think it's kind of revisionist history a little bit. But I can see, I mean. I'm a firm believer that once you put art into the world, anybody who watches it can take what they want from it. So I do feel like it's a little bit revisionist history, but I mean, you can point to certain things to kind of back up what you are trying to say, at least.
Yeah, I mean, to lend credibility to these things happen in stages, right? So,
Yeah.
like, what might be flamboyant in 1935 is this compared to the
Mhm.
everyday Joe, where that wouldn't even be recognized on the scale today of what we
Right.
consider to be flamboyant, right? So
Mhm.
I gotta sometimes I'm bad and Will has to kind of put me back in my place a little bit of saying, hey Robert, you know, this is your journey that you wanted to do. You got to remember we're in 1935, not in 2025. So I
I will say
appreciate,
though
yeah,
that the only thing that I can definitely see is like the rejection stuff near the end. And that one I think is definitely James Whale putting his thumbprint on what happens here.
100% agree with that. The rejection, which is going to be when I ask you guys about your favorite themes of the movie, this is going to be my favorite theme is the
Mm.
rejection portion of it, just like societal rejections. But I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily, I think that fits into all the things like of abnormalities within people and things of that
Hmm.
nature. You know, what we're going to talk about with the blind man and stuff. I think there's a level of rejection that comes with all that. I just think it was maybe put together in all that as a
Yeah.
theme rather than specifically singling out one thing. Like to
Agree.
me, it would have been more shocking if it's called The Bride of Frankenstein and at the end when they take all the wrapping off, it's a dude. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that would be a direct message right there. That would be
Yeah.
a mic drop moment. You know what I mean? But um, that did not happen. So, anyways, let's talk about some fun anecdotes if we can before we get to the heart of the movie here. If I can find my cursor. All right, there it is there. And there it is. Thank you. Yep.
You're welcome.
All right. Great radio right here. Okay, let's talk some anecdotes if we can. Elsa Lanchester played two roles. So I spoke to you about Mary Shelley, the lady in the beginning of the movie. This dual role helped bookend the story as a literary creation to life. The hairstyle and shriek of the bride made her iconic, but she's only on screen for Will said less than 5 minutes. Um, Dave, did we need more time with the bride in your opinion?
Yes, I do think they should have introduced her just a little bit earlier and kind of let that breathe a little bit instead of just bringing everything down literally on everybody right after she gets introduced.
Because I do think the sole purpose of her character is the rejection angle, right?
Hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
what if we create something specifically made for him and that thing even rejects him? Like, how would that make him feel?
Yeah.
Will, what do you think? Did we need longer or did we just need a different title to the movie?
Um, yeah, maybe. I think I can answer yes to both those questions. But yeah, I just wanted a little bit more, and especially because, like if the movie wants to be smart, then you have to critique it when it's not being smart. So like at the end here, if the whole point is this bride rejecting him, right? What's her experience? Like, why does she know that he's any stranger than other people, right? If this is one of the first people she's seeing, she has nothing to judge it by. So there's a little bit of a, chink in the armor there because of this. Like the movie wants to be really smart about what it's saying, but it doesn't really understand
Yeah.
experience. So that's why I was a little frustrated by the way the movie ended.
So, can I just ask this question because maybe I missed something or maybe I don't understand the rules of engagement like we talk about in this world quite a bit. Um, does them finding the 19-year-old's body from the grave and they're taking the physical body is not the same thing as stimulating the 19-year-old brain that came with that body. and any experiences that that female would have had. Do you get what I'm saying here at all?
Mhm.
Like they had to take the criminal brain in the first movie from Frankenstein to put that into Frankenstein to make him the way he is. That's the experiences in which he experiences the world. Is there
Mhm.
any experiences from this? Or I guess what I'm asking is the bride using 19 years of experience from this previous woman, or is that I missed something?
I think you're onto something there. But also it kind of still, for me, it kind of adds up to something just not being thought through all the way or
Mhm.
all the way through. Because there's just a lot of different things that are going on at the same time here. Like you've got different body parts, you got different. I don't know. If we're gonna, you're probably right, Robert, that there's something going on with the brain there of her being a 19-year-old uh, brain and having experience, but it doesn't. It still feels weak to me because, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little lost here on my what I'm trying to say, but it just
Dave,
feels like there.
oh, go ahead.
It doesn't.
Sorry.
Oh, well, yeah. I was just gonna say it just doesn't feel like if that's the case, why doesn't she remember how to talk? Right? Like there's just all these other questions that pop up when you kind of get into that come up.
Yeah, and
So.
that's the question I have for these a lot of the times is like, okay, we get a criminal brain, we're assuming it's a criminal, so we're assuming there's some semblance of maturation that's taken place. You got to assume if
Mhm.
it's a 20-year-old criminal, 30, 40, 50, whatever, there's, experiences have happened. So like, why can't they speak right away? Well, okay, maybe there's this level of like being in a coma and coming out and have to like relearn
Mhm.
things and things of that nature, whatever. Like my uncle right now, he fell, hit his head, and now he's 60 some year old man having to relearn how to learn language again. And so maybe there's some semblance of that to which maybe we're over critiquing, but I just wonder to go with what Will was saying, because I agree with you. Like when smart movies are trying to take themselves serious and want that in the credit or the respect of being smart, it is fair to critique them when something falls short of that. I just wonder if they ultimately are thinking, Dave. I guess my question is, are they thinking that the experiences of this 19-year-old woman are coming with this lady, or is there something like Will's saying? There's just something that doesn't quite transfer over here. How do you view it?
Well, let me preface it with this movie is kind of like the second half of the book because this is what happens in the original novel is that the monster wants to have a bride made for him. I think your reasoning is probably what the filmmakers thought. My problem that I end up having with it that makes it a plot hole then is that when they created the monster, he couldn't speak and he couldn't do anything. So he pretty much like his brain reverts back to being a child. Now, it could be brain trauma, switching bodies and everything that maybe it just kind of loses its whole thing. But I mean, we do see in this one where he starts to learn language again and starts to kind of flesh that whole thing out. I think that it makes me wonder was something cut that would help explain and bridge all of this together. And they're just kind of like, oh, I don't think anybody's going to critique this movie this hard and kind of think these through. But because you are making a movie that I think warrants a little bit deeper look at it, that is something I think needs to either be brain trauma is the cause here or like what like why would this person reject this person? There's not a reasoning here that kind of gives a solidified answer.
So you're saying that the creators of this film didn't have enough foresight to realize that Cinema 100 was coming down the road and that they needed
Exactly.
to button all this shit up. I uh I tend to find myself in both camps really because
Yeah.
I think everything that's being questioned about it is fair criticism. I
Hmm.
just sometimes there is the overly if you overly critique something, you will miss the joy of it. So and I don't think any of us did that in the moment. We do
Hmm.
take what it is, but we're talking here and we're making sound and I asked the question and you guys did your job. So I appreciate that. Let's talk more anecdotes if we can. That was only one. All right. Karloff hated that the monster spoke. He hated it, Will. He did not like it. Who gave a legendary performance in this, disagreed strongly with the choice to give the monster dialogue. He believed the monster's power came from the silence and the expression. Still, the lines, friend, good and She Hate Me like others do are now considered tragic and iconic. We both thought, Will, that it makes the movie better because, like you said, it would be a little bit kind of overplayed if they just kind of went with the expressions the whole time. Um, so much so when we get to quotes, all I did, just a spoiler alert, all I wrote down was two words: bad, good. And I think it sells so much in this movie, but it tells a
Mhm.
lot about life too,
Mhm.
especially early day, upbringing. Um, so with all that, Will, talking bad or good?
Definitely good. No, I think he was wrong on this one. I think he understands his character, but I think he might have just got a little bit, didn't realize that there was growth there for the character because
Mhm.
there was nowhere else for it to go without exploring some of the themes that they get into in the second act.
Dave, is this a case of Boris Karloff, the man in real life, just partying too much and not wanting to learn any lines? Or is this a case of someone just really feeling that it goes against the character? What do you like? Do you like that he talked? Did he talk too much? Or was it the right amount or not enough? Or not, shouldn't have happened?
I think he's wrong in the respect that if this movie would have been the last one in the series, he's dead on. He's correct though for that they pretty much for the most part revert the monster back to being just a grunting thing going forward. So I think it actually hurts the sequels him talking here because we don't get much character growth for it from here, but Will's dead on is that it definitely helps this character to grow in this film and I think that is so just looking at this movie in a vacuum he's wrong and that the talking part actually makes his character even better.
Uh, I agree with you. We're just going to echo the same thing. So we'll move on. I've one of the things that came up in my research here was I thought was fascinating. I did not catch this in real time. I wonder if your guys' DVD extras speaks on this at all, or if you guys caught it yourselves because you're just more intelligent human beings than me. But composer Franz Waxman created separate musical motifs for each major character, something revolutionary at the time for horror genre. The bride's theme is eerie but beautiful, capturing her tragic nature. The film helped elevate horror scores as a serious film music. Did either one of you, your DVD experiences, have this in the extras or in the commentary? Or if not, did you pick up on this? Because I did not notice a change so much, but I do find it fascinating that they gave this much detail to it. So let's start with Will and then we'll go to Dave.
Yeah, definitely didn't realize, didn't catch on to the motifs at all. But there was the one part where he's walking through nature and he's by himself and everything is all fluty and just it feels up. There's an uptick. There's
A whistle while you
a
work,
healthiness.
maybe?
Yeah, like it's a happy,
Yeah.
the scene is happy. And
Yeah.
then it slowly kind of, and I think it leads into the cabin. And then by the time you get to the guys coming into the cabin there, that music starts to change back into the horns and I'm not a I didn't study music, so I'm just gonna flutes and horns. But yeah, it definitely takes a turn there. So that's really the only time the music kind of stood out to me.
Dave, what about you?
The guy who was doing the commentary, he brought it up. The only time I've ever noticed it was when he literally is like, you can tell it here, and like his audio drops out on purpose, so you could hear it. The only thing that I've noticed with the score is when they introduce the bride, is that it slowly turns into wedding bells until she like panics. That's the only one that's always stuck out to me, just because of how bleak it gets from that point. But I thought that one was a good touch to kind of incorporate that in.
Yeah, I like it. You're right. Those wedding bells, I saw those at the end. I like the idea of as an Easter egg in the back, just to go along with Frankenstein and Abbott and Costello, maybe Frankenstein and the dwarves, the as he's walking through the woods, you just see like seven dwarves go walking by.
The other
Yeah,
way.
that would be fun. Um, or maybe they were the dwarves or the ones that were in the
Mhm.
jars. That would be
Ooh.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're writing the next sequel, boys. Anyways, I really enjoyed that. let's get into the heart of the movie here if we can.
Hmm.
So usually we do important scenes, and lately we've been doing double features, so we've been comparing a lot of things. Normally, when we do a one-off movie like this, we would go important scene by important scene. I want to up into the cabin scene. Let's just go act by act here if we can a little bit. So let's talk about the first setup scene if we can. We get this storm taking place, and we get to meet the writer of these
Hmm.
characters. Okay, Mary Shelley. Interesting. So there's first of all, I found it interesting in the first place that there was Mary Shelley, there was the Lord Byron,
Hmm.
and then there was I believe Mary Shelley's probably husband, Mr. Shelley. I just found it interesting that there was three of them to kind of set this story up.
Yeah.
Who's this third guy? Why is he there? What other story are they telling us? Is this the LGBTQT
Mm.
community coming into play? You know, I just found that a little bit interesting. But um, where are you guys at with this sort of setup to this movie? Almost to the point of like pulling the curtain back a little bit to see, hey, look, this is just a fictional story from this human being, and we're getting ready to share that with you. Does that kind of kill like the 1935 audience, who maybe early days might think these things are possible? Anybody
I
want to jump on that one? Will?
It's a good point. I for me it never kills the film for me. I love the fourth wall type
Hmm.
breaking, right? Where they kind of rip back the curtain, the Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz, the what was Asteroid City with Bryan Cranston kind of telling the story along with the film. I love that kind of stuff. So it really worked for me. The only thing that kind of was off-putting at first was I thought like I started thinking, oh, are they going to try to tell this story like Frankenstein's with Mary Shelley? I got a little thrown by it, but besides that, I love it when they kind of have a little fun with telling the
Yeah.
story. Um, so
Dave, why, when they did this, did they not do kind of like a Wizard of Oz opening where Lord Byron and Mr. Shelley are also characters in this movie? And if they are, I missed it completely. Why not do something like that if they're going to go this route? What are your
It's
thoughts on that?
it sounds to me from just kind of things that I've been like picked up on here and there, because actually the housekeeper that leaves them like as just a trio is actually Minnie, Una O'Connor. So like I've actually heard like rumors that this movie is supposed to be closer to like modern time as almost like a parallel like world where things haven't really updated past when they were kind of in this thing. So it's supposed to be them almost telling like a futuristic tale because they didn't have the technology as of yet. And the only thing that one of the things that I actually love about it though is that Lord Byron's like, "Oh, why don't you tell us that story again that you told us the last time we were here and how terrifying it was?" And that's where she's like, "Oh no, there's actually more to the story that I haven't told." So to
Yeah.
me, that just kind of tickles me knowing that like the first movie is literally the first half of the book, and this is like, "Oh, I didn't even finish telling you the story because I got so scared this last time. Let me finish."
So what is the dynamic there? Why are we getting these three instead of just like a thought, between the husband and the wife and him saying, "Oh, well, Mary, what was the second half of that?" Like tell
Yeah.
me, like flushing out her writing, you know what I mean? Like what is this dynamic?
I would have liked it better as what you had brought up actually if the other two guys would have been other people in the world. Like if it would have been like Colin Clive playing one of the guys and so like incorporating him into that story and then have the other guy be not even necessarily, not
The
having
blind
necessarily be
man in the
earnest, but
cabin.
yeah, something like that where it kind of fits so well together and almost like one of those things where you're like, because I know originally she had wrote this story as like a competition almost, where a bunch of them went to a cab or went to like a mansion for like a weekend or a summer or something, and she came up with this story, and they would just share what they had wrote. So like playing more into that, I think, or alluding more to that would have, I think, gave it a little bit more to solidify things.
Okay. Does the beginning affect the audience at all, and the realist nature of what it could have been to them? Like in this sense of scaring them.
I kind of put it more in the lines of like they did with Dracula, where they had the
Okay.
actor come out and give you that like prologue. I think it's filmmaking was such like a new thing and they were trying to do different things there that they wanted to be creative and they thought it was a fun way to do it this way. And I do agree that it's kind of an interesting thing to start a movie off with.
Yeah.
So, Will, let's talk about everything leading up to the cabin scene because we kind of get there. I don't want to say quickly, but things are moving
Yeah.
rapidly from scene to scene to scene
Yeah.
until we get there. That's kind of like the moment where the things takes a breath, starts slowing down, and lets us digest a little bit. We get a
Yeah.
lot that takes place. We get the you know, I think they did a really cool job of kind of resetting the table for us.
Sure.
Hey, we don't have a DVDs don't exist in 1935. Let us remind you a little
Mhm.
bit, which I think is ultimately the purpose of this scene in the
Yeah.
beginning, just a kind of a refresher of where we were and where we're going. To that extent, I thought it worked really well, because even I needed a few things to catch up. I was like, oh yeah, grave diggers, this whole thing, the hanging man, everything made sense. Um, but right away, we find out that Henry's alive and he gets dragged back to the castle. And Minnie's doing her Minnie thing. She's screaming and hollering at everything. And, she notices that Frankenstein the monster is still alive. And, she comes back to warn all the mobs about that. And nobody believes her in the beginning. And then we see Henry, who's alive again, with basically no burns, no destruction, no cuts, nothing. They did a good job showing all that those scars on the monster. Didn't do a great job with Henry here. He's a little fatigued, so to speak, but like other than that, nothing of real harm. What stood out to you, Will, in these early scenes, if anything, other than maybe just the pace up until we get to the cabin scene?
Um, there's humor here, which was a little surprising for me. I was not expecting to laugh as much as I did in this film. There's, at least 4 to 5 scenes that, I laughed out loud. And one of them is Minnie's reaction to seeing Frankenstein alive. That scream that she gives is just insane, and I loved it. I also thought it was, I don't know why they had to do little Maria's dad dirty like that. Like he
Yeah.
already lost a daughter and then he's got to, die at the hands of Frankenstein too. I thought that was a little rude. But
Rude.
yeah, I thought I really liked what she said about the pacing because they didn't waste any time at the beginning of the film. And sometimes what we've been experiencing over the, first 7 or 8 years that we've been watching here is the beginning parts of the movie can kind of drag a little bit because like dialogue and like characters are getting is fleshed out a little bit and it sometimes can feel a little slow, but here there's not a moment's rest until he's finally out of the jail. So I really liked that about this film.
Dave, what about you?
Oh yeah, no, I mean I love doing that quick recap where you kind of get just these like major plot points to get you up to speed. Echoing what Will said, I love that they actually have they have the monster. I also actually love the monster, the continuity there, where it doesn't feel like a cheat, where it makes sense that okay, the thing fell through, there's this tunnel underneath it, because that's just it makes sense that that's possible. And then him killing little Maria's father and mother on his way out of there. But then I think they do a really good job at kind of balancing, like, I mean, I agree. They should have Henry be much more injured from what we saw. Like he literally hit the windmill coming down, so he should have been something should have been broken. But outside of that, I like how we kind of see him go back to his family and then them trying to nurse him back to health. I do think this actually takes place over a much longer time period than we realize. They don't do a great job at kind of getting that. Because I do know that the monster was supposed to be at first you see him all these injuries, and then as you kind of see him more and more, he slowly heals
Okay.
and gets to be back to more how his normal look would be. But I also think they do well with like introducing Dr. Pretorius as well, where you kind of jump between these three story threads at a good interval until you get to Frankenstein being out at the cabin.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I think they did a damn good job as much as they jump around and we get kind of these subplots that are taking
Hmm.
place. Because we do spend some interesting, amount of time in the cabin scene, which is great because it's I think the most intriguing, most important part of this particular movie. But like all the things happening before that, you've got the like Henry Frankenstein in this movie really he plays a small part in the beginning and he plays a little bit more of a bigger part towards the end of this movie, but he's kind of forgotten. And in a guy in a sequel, you would think a guy that was as relevant as he was in the first movie, not necessarily in the foreground as much in this movie. But I think it's the point, right? Like this movie was about Frankenstein, which is why I do think it needed a different title.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure that it brings the audience to the theaters. So from a marketing standpoint, I think they did it right.
Yeah.
It's just one of those areas that in hindsight we kind of look back on and go, I don't know if it was right, but I think it was right in the moment. So with all that being said, what I guess I like about it is that to me, I thought they were honest and true the whole time to who should have been in the forefront of this movie, which is Frankenstein the monster.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that part up until the cabin. I did want to ask this question because it stood out to me, and I'm not sure. Anytime children or dogs die on screen, there must be some type of impact to it. I feel like
Yeah.
that's the way I've always seen it in movies. Even to this day, you just don't do that unless there's. But in this one, we get this weird moment with Frida, this little girl who was a part of this other group of girls. So I'm just going to read what I wrote. We have our second dead child in as many movies. Are you surprised by the lack of impact this one played to the narrative? The first one was brilliant, right? Brilliant.
Mhm.
And it was the transformational part of that movie that elevated it to the next, right? In Frankenstein, you guys remember the drowning of the girl and
Oh
then
yeah.
through the streets, right? That's the part where you're like, holy shit, this movie just raised up a half notch here.
Yeah.
Didn't have that impact in here. As a matter of fact, it's just a one off. And why do you think they did that with a child? Did it feel necessary? Does it add to the evilness of him? I felt like it's okay to kill adults when you've been created by adults. But to kill a child here at this point in your journey, it felt unnecessary. Where you at, Will?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It definitely felt less impactful because they literally spend like 10, 8 seconds somewhere in there
Yeah.
because it's one scene and that's it. And was there even did we see Frankenstein like smashing his way through this? Because I don't think we
No.
did. So it's almost like the collateral damage of the
Yeah.
monsters we create maybe is what's going on here. Like he's just thinking about escaping, so he has no humanity right now because it's our fault. Like I think that's what they're trying to get at here. But again, it just doesn't quite work because we don't get to see much of the scene, so it almost ends up feeling like an afterthought. So much so that I kind of forgot that happened until you mentioned it. So
Yeah, and it just made me curious. The reason I mentioned it was because I thought there was such thought given to the first death in the first movie to the child that I was shocked that it wasn't, I guess, used as a propulsion unit in this movie.
yeah.
Um, to a point where I would have just left it out. It felt like if any of the scenes could have been left out, this is one of them that really didn't add a layer to anything to me. Dave, what are your thoughts?
No, yeah, I mean, I definitely, it's interesting because this is such a redemptive tale for the monster. So it's weird to have him kill a child, but then not even, 'cause I mean, I actually kind of forgot about it until you started talking about it. Then it started to click what you had like brought up. And I was like, okay, I can see that. The only other thing I could think that you could do there is show like Henry learning about this and have this be almost him feeling horrible about it, kind of going along with the collateral damage thing, like the monsters that we create, having that weigh on his conscience, but they don't really linger too much or like develop even that kind of story thread there that would have helped to kind of give that more impact.
I wonder
Yeah,
if this is one of those scenes that gets
Mm,
cut. One of the scenes in that 15 minutes that we're missing. Because it makes sense if you think about it, like the Hays Code is about decency,
yeah.
at least supposedly. So showing a child
Yeah.
die is not a decent thing. So that this could be a clear cut scene that's just not there.
Right.
yeah, I laugh every time we say it, but it probably is true. I mean, it feels like an scapegoat when we do these because it's like, oh, they probably just left it on the editing room floor, and it's like, no, they probably did. They probably
Yeah.
did. I mean, because you have to give credibility to a guy that put that much thought into the first movie, but in this movie, something's missing. Something's
Yeah.
missing. So, um, okay, let's get to the cabin scene if we can.
Hmm.
Dave, Will and I have kind of already alluded to we've given notoriety to how impactful that scene is to the movie. Do you share these same sentiments? And what is that scene? Because I gotta be honest with you, I get kind of weirdly proud with stupid things. I'm watching that scene take place, and I'm like, "Yup, we drafted a good one. Will and I know what we're doing. Cinema 100, damn, you know what I mean? Like I did because I was like, this is gonna be one of those scenes like the girl, much like the girl and the father carrying the dead body through the street in the first movie. There might not be like that iconic image in this scene, but
Yeah.
the whole scene has there's weight to it, and it does elevate the movie to the next level. Dave, does it have that same impact for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, because in the book, actually, he hides out in like a shed, or like he can hear them, so he learns to read and to talk through watching this like blind man interact with his family. So I think it's kind of an interesting way to change it by having him actually interact directly with the old man who's a hermit, doesn't have anybody else. So these two actually, make this camaraderie, make this friendship, and we get to see him learning these different things and like them getting along great. And then you kind of see as like um having the outside society show back up with these two hunters that end up being like, oh no, he's a monster, and then just ruining everything that they have going for him. Like he finally found that one person to kind of help complete him where he doesn't feel lonely anymore, and then gets that snatched away. So I think it definitely it's one of my favorite kind of sequences in this film.
Yeah, it's funny because what's done well in this is it kind of sets up like you've got the blind man character who is genuinely
Hmm.
cares about him, and not there's no abuse of his caring for this person, like,
Right.
or his dealings with this person. It's all for, I mean, there's selfish nature there for sure. He no longer feels alone, and
Right.
he's thanking God for bringing something to him. There's that, but we all have that. Like that's still, you know, still overshined by his, genuine, authentic caring for the monster. So much so that when Dr. Pretorius starts kind
Yeah.
of treating him in a same fashion as far as like him being a human being, and he realizes that if you treat him differently, he lashes out.
Right.
But you can tell that it's still for gain. It's for selfish reasons here that are not necessarily for the good of the person. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I just think that the cabin scene has so many things going for it that maybe wasn't even intended. Will, what do you love about this scene?
Just the nuance, right? Like not just that there's good and bad, but there's good and bad within, one thing. Like fire is both good and bad.
Yeah.
Humans are both good and bad. I think that's kind of what the theme here is, and I just thought it was really well executed. Especially like there's I think one of my notes here is it was also fun too, right? Because he's drinking wine and he's being a little sloppy, and it was like Will after his third glass of wine. Like they're having fun in this scene too. So it's just a very human scene where
Yeah.
two people are connecting and learning from each other, and I just thought it was well crafted.
Molly, wine good, meatloaf bad.
I cook, so that's my fault.
um, okay. I wrote something here that is Robert's overreaching moment, and we're gonna do it, and it's sponsored here by Degree All In Moment. No, it's something. Okay, this moment, this scene to me, Will, there was a lot of parallels here to City Lights, Charlie Chaplin's
Mhm.
City Lights. Okay, so Dave, do you know anything about that movie?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Oh, you love it? You love the ending?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. One of our favorite scenes in cinema history, one of our favorite scenes in this journey so far. I just, I had to get this out of me. So it's long. Hang on. There's a lot of questions kind of in one, and I want you guys to just answer with whatever comes to your mind because this is like a brain fart, trying to get it out so you guys can run with it.
Squeaky.
Yeah. Inspired by the cabin scene in Bride of Frankenstein between the blind man and the monster, I started thinking about privilege and how often we take it for granted. The
Mhm.
blind man, though without sight, is able to see the goodness in the monster more clearly than the others. Their connection is powerful, not one of dependence, but one of mutual completion. The blind man isn't made weaker by the monster's presence, but rather more socially whole, more human. It's also made me reflect on why we often love babies and dogs so unconditionally. Perhaps it's because they can't speak. Things I've said before on this show. I do think there's something to that on a psychological level. We love babies, we adore them. We love dogs, we adore them. Selfishly, I think there's some loyalty things there that maybe we don't really flush out. But the moment they, not dogs, but the moment babies start speaking, it makes, not that we don't love them, but that makes that relationship a little bit
Mhm.
more rougher edges. You know what I mean? So I'll just continue with what I wrote. Perhaps it's because they can't speak. Without language, they communicate purely through emotion and instinct. But once they begin to talk, they become more complex, more human, and often more difficult to love with the same ease. What is it about us as humans that the more senses we have, the more intelligence we possess, the harder it becomes for us to get along with one another? Any of that come out to you in this scene? Because boy, was that what I was feeling in this scene.
No, I
Will.
think you're onto something
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. It is interesting that we have that kind of relationship with like the unconditional love we give to dogs, um, and not to humans, because there is a loyalty there. There's
Mhm.
something about when we, as humans, we have there's some quality about our experience that is different than the other animals. And I don't know if it's because we can put ourselves in other people's shoes, and sometimes those shoes fit and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, it's harder to relate to people, and we kind of have less empathy for them. There's something there in what you were saying and in the scene where that the blind man, his feet fit into all these different shoes. They fit into the monster's shoes. So why is that? Is it partially selfish? Probably. He's a hermit. He probably lacks some social,
Mhm.
qualitative uh, interactions in his life. But at the same time, like he could just as easily reject the monster. So I definitely I'm on board with what you're saying. There's something big is happening in the scene.
Mhm.
Dave, what does it say about this idea that the more tools we have to use, so to speak, the less empathetic we become? In this case, is it just as simple as he's a hermit, he's socially starving, that he'll accept a monster into his life? But like, look what comes from his
Yeah.
acceptance of that monster. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
why is it when we have these privileges of a full autonomous body or a fully abled body and everything that comes with it, we seemingly, not all of us, and it's not like I said, it's not a blanket
Yeah.
statement, but it is something that is can be observed. I feel like with my question and specifically with the privileges of um, all senses, how does that play an impact on this blind man and how he versus if he wasn't blind? Because we've seen everybody else that was able-bodied and how when they can see the monster, even so at the end, whether or not we question why she does it,
Yeah.
she screams at the monster. So what's happening in this scene?
I mean, the easiest way to like kind of boil it down would be, I mean, judging a book by its cover. They look at him, they see a monster, where it's kind of interesting that the only blind person he ever encounters is willing to give him a chance because he doesn't see the outward like horrificness of this person. And so he's skipping that step because he just doesn't have that ability to it. Kind of going on what you're saying though is that it almost seems like the idea of just kind of an over-encompassing thing is like when you're missing one of your senses, maybe you are much more empathetic to other people who are kind of ostracized already because you can kind of be like, okay, you're already being judged. You're already being, cast out of society. I am as well. So here is like the easiest way. Like we have that common denominator where we are missing some type of thing to help us connect on this level. And I mean, again, you also could boil it down just easily as that he is a hermit, but I do think it's more of just that he is willing to just kind of help somebody who came to him and seemed like that person desperately needed somebody. And in turn, he probably did too.
Yeah, because the entire movie of City Lights depends on this woman's reaction to the tramp at the end of the movie.
Hmm.
Are you going to abandon the tramp because we will riot through the screen with anger and rage if you dare do this? And that movie flirted with that, right? And so much so that the whole reason it's left up to doubt in the beginning is because we know people like this that exist. If everybody did the right thing or was good, there is no moment of is she
Yeah,
going to? There's
right.
just knowing she's going to, right? So the
Hmm.
reason it works in that movie is because unfortunately there is so many people that don't
All right.
react in the way that we wanted Virginia Cheryl to react, and in this case, how the blind man reacts. So I just thought it was fascinating that both those
Yeah.
movies, City Lights and this, both had this same type of response um, whether it be the monster or the tramp, and they both came through. I thought with swim colors. So awesome. Awesome. I'm glad we had that conversation. I did have another thought provoking one, but let's get there in a second. After this, we kind of get to all the backlash that comes from it. There's the burning down of the cabin. Man, they love burning things down in these movies. Um, we get the unfortunate. For a minute there, I thought we might get an abandonment of the blind man too. Which, dude, that would have been the
Mm.
City Lights moment for me. Like if there would have been some semblance. Why do I have okay? All right, Zoom agrees with me. Um, that was weird.
Like, comment, subscribe, right?
Yeah, please do. I just found it interesting that that could have been there could have been an abandonment there, but we don't. We get the townspeople find them there,
Hmm.
and they rush them all out, and we ultimately get to the place where the monster is hiding in the laboratory again, to where he's ultimately going to find his mate that is
Hmm.
being built for him. Everything after the cabin scene, Will, what stands out to you up into the finale here? What do you like about it? What doesn't work? What does work? Where are you at in the third act here?
Yeah, I thought there was we needed a little bit more of Elizabeth. I
Hmm.
thought there wasn't enough there. Kind of felt a little tenuous, I guess. It just didn't feel like there was enough there for us to actually understand Henry. We just didn't see Henry have enough panic about this situation, right? It just kind of felt a little bit forced. It didn't feel authentic enough. But I also thought technically, like from a purely like entertainment standpoint, the last 10 to 15 minutes were just superb. The
Hmm.
way they had the elevator rise up with the body on it and the all the electricity and everything, I just thought they did a really good job kind of setting up from a like purely entertainment standpoint those last 15 minutes or so.
Hmm.
Dave, what about you?
Yeah, it's kind of echoing some of those things, like the monster running through the like forest that is like barren. Some just great imagery going into like the cemetery and everything. The other one that I kind of find interesting as well is in the crypt when you have Dr. Pretorius as he plays on Frankenstein's monster wanting that friendship to replace the old man, where he kind of just sees Dr. Pretorius sees ways where he can manipulate him, and just kind of like how it's like, oh, we know this is a bad guy. We've known for a while that this guy is very just nefarious. And I thought that was kind of an interesting scene to kind of help set the stage to where it goes to when we end up at the lab.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we get to the lab, it's interesting because I think the problem I have in this movie, and I use the term problem loosely. It's not something I think about too much, but I think it if I had when we get to fix it in one move, it would be clean up Henry's
Hmm.
character arc, right? I don't necessarily like he feels like he's back and forth, and the motivations that gets him back and forth, they don't really feel authentic or I guess natural. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Natural that gets you to the next thing. almost to the point where what I would have liked better, I feel like, is if he would have been, because Pretorius would have been so persistent in getting the information that he's missing in order to get his small creations larger, because that's ultimately what it came down to. Is I'm having a problem making them big. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
they seem to be more fluent and great, which I thought was awesome, almost to the
Yeah.
point where one of my, I'll save it for hard hitting questions, but um, I just, what if I think it would have been almost better for Henry Frankenstein's character, not necessarily the
Hmm.
actor in the movie and on screen time, but character, if he would have been like, look, I'm washing my hands of this. I want nothing more to do with this. If you feel so propelled, I'll give you what I know, but then that's it. I'm
Hmm.
done. And like me and Elizabeth are married now. We're going to go live our life. And then you just see Pretorius in the lab cooking up what he's missing, and we go from there. Um, I ultimately think that would have been better because I'm just not sure Henry was needed really in this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean he's there in name only, right? Frankenstein. That's why it's
Yeah.
there. If that's what it feels like anyway.
Hmm.
oh, you're right. Yeah, because that is his same name. I forgot about that. Okay, I want to ask this question: does the movie's main themes ultimately not get the severity or serious kinds of conversation that it hopes to garner by the medium in which it chooses to do this in? So, like, because it chose horror genre, which is fine. I'm just asking this question, but I want you to specifically think about it from these two perspectives. Okay, does the movie's main themes ultimately not get the severity or serious kinds of conversation that it hopes to garner by the medium which it chooses, specifically from a 1935 audience to a 2025 audience? I think the conversation is taken more serious with today's audience
Hmm.
because the possibilities of this seem to be not that far away, or if already happening. Where in 1935, maybe this medium, if you're trying to talk about rejection, trying to talk about man playing God, maybe it feels more science fiction and less realistic in 1935. Will, where do you think with the question? Do you feel like the medium it chose here, not necessarily the medium, but the genre it chose, spoils the conversation in 1935, or do you think there's enough happening in that time frame?
Um, I just don't know how much people care about the conversation in
Mhm.
1935. I still think it's a time frame where people just want to go and enjoy an hour and a half of their time, kind of transporting to another world and not necessarily thinking about how it relates to the one that they're
Hmm.
in. I think there's probably a lot of kind of discord in the world and at that time, and they want that transportation. So when they're going to see a movie, I think it's more about the entertainment than it is about necessarily trying to relate to what the actors and the creators are trying to say. So
Dave, you don't think there's three cinephiles that exist in 1935 like us that are outside that theater going, hey, let's break that down?
I mean, it's possible. They're probably definitely the minority, but I kind of echoing some of that. If you're looking at this from like an LGBTQ plus thing, I don't think that was necessarily at the forefront of the like main moviegoer at the time. I think that's definitely something that kind of developed as people started to break down and started watching these things more. The only thing that I could think they could really, I think anybody could go to the theater though and connect with the idea of rejection. That's really the only one that I think most people will be like, oh, I understand that. And it helps you to kind of feel for the creature more. But I also think it's more of like an entertainment thing that, like, after the fact, you're probably not going to let it linger with you like it would nowadays.
What about this? The idea of man playing God, that theme. 1935 versus 2025. Now we see how it is possible for man to play God, and what are the repercussions that come with that. In 1935, that, cloning a sheep named Dolly. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like, um, what do you think? Will, just that theme.
yeah, I mean that's why this theme could exist at that time because I think a lot of people saw it as we shouldn't be doing that.
Hmm.
It's it's anti-Christian, it's anti-religious, it's blasphemous. I think that sentiment is a lot more present back
Hmm.
then than it is today. That's for sure.
Dave, any last thoughts on that before we move on to something else?
The only thing I could say there would be you could kind of correlate it to like world leaders that are doing like it's tough because you didn't necessarily know how much of what they were doing at that point. And it wasn't until they started to like actually create war that you really would start to kind of, I think, make that correlation. Because it wasn't until much after the war that you kind of started figuring out about the atrocities that were going on during that. That's really the only thing I could think of outside of what Will was saying as another possible like lane that you could go with it.
Okay. So with all that being said, then to put a bow on this movie as far as the scenes and the important meat and potatoes, what's your favorite theme from the movie? Because mine specifically is this idea that I spoke about with the uh, rejection, just
Hmm.
social, the senses, everything like that. I thought that was the most important theme that I took away from it. But what I love about these movies is that when you offer multiple themes and you do a good job of telling those stories, you can get different perspectives. So, Will, what theme, kind of sticks to you the most?
Yeah, that one's the most thoroughly presented. I
Hmm.
think that's the one that has the best argument for being the main theme.
Hmm.
The what makes us human that's kind of going on in the middle
Hmm.
is the one that I've most drawn to, though.
Dave, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going along with the same lines there. Those are the ones I think kind of stick out, and they're the best fleshed out ones. I do think this one a little bit less of like the playing God. And I mean, the other thing, kind of to say it a little bit differently, is also just finding that acceptance and just when you finally don't, just how much it has broken this monster that's already been just kind of looking for that and just seeing how defeated he is to the point where he's like, you stay, and then just ending everything. Like that is a good way of him being like, okay, I'm not gonna find anything like that in this world, so let me just go ahead and take you out with me.
Yeah. Uh, it's sort of like Emma Stone in last
Mm,
year's oh my gosh, Will help me
Poor
movie.
things.
Poor Things. Yeah, a
mm,
lot of parallels, obviously,
yeah,
in Frankenstein being the main theme there.
right.
Um, Anything else from this movie that you guys feel like we didn't touch on before we move on to nominations and quick hitters?
I don't think so.
All right,
The only thing
Will.
I was gonna
Oh,
say
sorry.
here,
Go ahead,
actually,
Dave.
no, you're fine. Is one of the hunters that actually shows up is John Carradine. He is the father to the Carradine children, who, like, one of his sons is actually Kill Bill. He is Bill. And his other one I know was in like the Revenge of the Nerd movies. So yeah, he had like two or three kids that went on to be like actors in the 80s.
I love that. One for me, one for Will. Revenge of the Nerds for me, and Kill Bill for Will. All right, let's talk nominations. I thought the cast did a great job. This was a fully fleshed out, complete movie. Nothing bad to
Hmm.
say about it. Really enjoyed the movie. We have little critiques here and there, but like we've watched
Yeah.
movies where we really harp on, whether it's writing flaws or it's
Hmm.
Act Two fallouts or whatever it is. Just something didn't fully make it work. This was a great movie. I'm glad we watched it. Will, what do you have as far as nominations? Actors, actresses, supporting, whatever you want. Throw it what you got.
Yeah, I mean, Boris Karloff as the monster, I think, is a clear-cut leading best actor candidate. I think Dr. Pretorius, Ernest Thesiger, I believe is how you'd probably say that. He's a good supporting actor candidate. I really like what he's doing in this film. He has a couple of really fun scenes, especially when he's
Hmm.
kind of going over the miniature creations that he has.
Yeah.
It's very funny. And then I actually want to make sure that Una O'Connor gets nominated for Best Supporting Actress as Minnie. I just thought her performance was so good. It was just, it was a light performance in a movie that could be pretty heavy from time to time. So
Give me that. Give me her real name one more time.
Una, Una O'Connor.
Una O'Connor.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, dude. Let's just give 30 seconds of love to Minnie
Yeah.
because she brought the noise, baby. She fully
Yeah.
knew her role in it. So much so that when Elizabeth sees Henry come through the door, no reaction, deadpanned it all together. He's dead. That's her fiance, husband. They're supposed to be married on that day, and she's just like, bring him into the living room. It's like, no, Minnie would. That's my husband. Whatever. Yeah, she did
Yeah.
great. I'm with you. Supporting actress. Lock it up.
Uh,
Dave,
Fun fact
anything
about
for
her,
you?
actually. Well,
Oh,
actually,
give it
fun
to me.
fact about her that this role was written for her. Like,
Oh, really?
yes, that's who, like, when they were writing the character, they were thinking of her.
Huh.
Um, why? Who is this woman in this world?
She was
Like,
a bit player in a lot of stuff in this like era. She didn't do a lot of movies, but in this era, she was in just a good handful of things.
okay, okay. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to quick hitters. Memorable quotes. I got to tell you, there's a lot more here than just bad and good, but to me, it just symbolized the
Yeah.
entire movie of what it was going for. Um, so much so that if you had to like, what's that movie, Eddie Murphy, Man of a Thousand Words or something like that.
Mm.
Um, I think bad and good pretty much is like our starting point, right? Don't touch it. Bad, 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 good,
Yeah.
good, good. No, yes,
Yeah.
like those are all in the same vein,
Yeah.
right? The connotation that comes with them. To me, that's all that was really needed. Any other quotes though that stood out to you in this movie? Because there are some funny ones. There are some
Yeah.
ones that deserve to be talked
My,
about. Will,
yeah, my favorite one is when Dr. Pretorius is kind of introducing his miniatures, and he gets to the third one. He says, "This third one looks so disapprovingly at the king and queen, they made him an archbishop." I thought that was perfect.
yeah, well, it's actually more clever than the movie is, I think.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Dave, what about you? Any?
Kind of sticking with that scene there. I do love when they're just chatting back and forth. He's continuing to introduce things, and then you see the king has ripped out of the like wax paper or whatever at the top of it, and he's like banging on the glass where the queen is just annoyed with him, and how Pretorius is just like, "Oh, this cheeky fellow gets out again."
Yeah. Um, Okay, hard hitting questions. I have two. I have two. So the first one I have on the speaking about the king is I at first thought it was like a nod to Charles Lawton's
Mm.
Henry King the Eighth,
It is.
and it is him.
It's not him. It's inspired. Like they made the king look up like he's supposed to look like Henry VIII.
Oh,
Uh,
so Will, did you know that?
yeah, well, I didn't know that, but definitely,
Hmm.
that was my first thought too, Rob.
I thought it was him, and I was like, so first of all, not only did I think it was genius that they found a way to like capture that footage from the
Hmm.
movie and put that in there because I thought it was.
Yeah.
I'm a little disheartened that it's not, but can we just talk about the technology here in 1935? How I don't know how they did it now. Like I wouldn't know
Mm.
how they did it then, let alone now. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that's really good. It was flawless. I just really thought they did a great job with that. So
They did.
They did say a little bit about it in the commentary. I guess they used oversized glass. So these people were like sitting like behind this and they had black felt. And then they filmed it from like far away. So it made it look like that it was that. And then it's forced perspective by but you're overlaying it over top of the film of like the normal size people, which when I
okay.
heard them say, I was like, oh, that's amazing that you could just do that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I probably need to see some behind the scenes footage on that online somewhere. Um, my second hard hitting question is: do you think that Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, and the director of See No Evil, Hear No Evil, watched the cabin scene and was like, "Dude, I have a brilliant idea for a comedy."
Maybe actually.
It's definitely a possibility.
Have you guys seen that movie?
Yes, that
Yeah.
movie's great.
It is one of the underrated comedies of all time. Night, Grandma. Doppelgangers. I originally had one, Liam Neeson, I thought looked a little about like the
Mm,
cabin, the old man in the cabin, but after they showed him on another take,
mm.
I didn't see it, so I dropped it. I didn't have any doppelgangers. Did you guys?
I've got one. Colin Clive looks a bit like Ricky Gervais if he was on a diet.
Talk about a modern day recast. What would that look
Yeah.
like with Ricky Gervais?
Ugh.
Um, should this movie have been drafted in hindsight? Big yes. Big
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Here's one that's always interesting. Is this a rewatch, a scene study, or a forget it? Will, rewatch or a scene study? Now, I know you're biased now because you bought the physical media. All right. But if you didn't do that,
Yeah.
would this be a rewatch or a scene study?
No, I definitely think it's a rewatch. Especially if you're trying to learn a little bit more about Boris Karloff, like because we
Mhm.
might not see much more of him if we're not gonna kind of dive into horror as much as we have been the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think so. Rewatch.
Dave, what about you? Obviously, you've watched it now 4 times, but you're doing it for work. Will you do it for pleasure ever again?
Oh yeah, this one I think is this one. I mean, it's aided by the fact that it's not long, so it's easy kind of just to put it on and watch. But I mean, this one I do think has more meat on the bones where you can kind of watch different things and you can pick different things out of it. They might not go as far as they should or they could go into things, but there is still more there to kind of watch than just more of a surface level film.
Okay. Something that I added to this, going off of the discussion that we had in the beginning, is this movie better than the first in this franchise?
Man, it's tough. I think just a little bit, but it's really close. I think they're a really good pair. If you watch them back to back, I just think it would be a total experience would be better than either of them by themselves.
Dave?
Yeah, I give a slight nod to this one as well, right? I think it just they just flesh things out much better. And it's kind of going back to what we said all like earlier with the whole sequel talk, is I think we're already in this world, so we kind of just jump right in and get to develop it more.
I couldn't agree more with you guys if I had tried. Fix it in one move. For me, it was Henry's character arc. If we could just get that figured out, I think it would be a little bit better for him and for the movie. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, I just wanted to see a little bit more of the bride. I kind of get after talking through this idea about rejection, I think I understand why we don't get the bride as much as maybe I want to. But it still feels like if we got her a little bit more, the film, we might be able to, she might be able to learn something, right?
Mhm.
Like she might be able to find his humanity and it in each other. So it just feels like a little bit more of her gives us a more complete movie. But
Will, while Dave answers this, I want you to think of what you would retitle this as. Go ahead, Dave.
okay.
Yeah, I'm actually going to kind of piggyback off what you said, Robert, is I think the fleshing out of the Henry character is a little bit more here. I actually think that if the route to kind of go here to help deepen the story would have been to relay more of the crimes that the monster has unknowingly committed, so that way he kind of feels worse, and that would be why Pretorius could play on him even more, being like, hey, if we make him a bride or we make him a mate, maybe he goes away. If this is an easy way where you're not, because him just washing his hands of it and kind of just disappearing, I do kind of think hurts the film kind of overall.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Will, what'd you come up with?
Uh, Frankens 2. That's the first thing that came into my head. Uh, Frankenstein 2. Who's the monster here? That's the only other thing I got. Sorry, they're not very good today.
Frankenstein Part 2. Uh, let's move on. What other movies did it remind you of? For me, City Lights. There was so many
Mhm.
parallels of City Lights here that I made a whole big long question about it. So, what about you guys?
Yeah, that's a really good poll. I hadn't really put two and two together there, so I really like where you went with that one. I mean, Poor Things is the first thing I thought
Yeah.
of. There's so many parallels here. But yeah.
I
Finally,
mean,
one, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
oh, I was gonna say, I mean, the only other thing, I mean, outside of comparing this to all of the adaptations or the different takes on it, there was actually in the 80s called The Bride, which I think it actually starred the singer Sting, where he plays, I think he plays either the mad scientist or something along those lines. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it's more kind of I think it's a modern update a little bit more to this kind of story.
Okay, okay. I just thought of a bolder title. If James Whale was really trying to do it, it should just be The Groom of
Oh.
Frankenstein. So is what it should have been. One hot take. So the only hot take I have from this is I was pleasantly shocked by how like stimulated this made my brain, like
Mm,
thought provoking this movie was. And I think that's the point of all movies, but like some fall short sometimes.
yeah.
Whenever a movie does this, and Sinners did this to me in so many levels, like I was blown away by that movie. Um, but this movie, again, I think it's like it's the pleasant surprises of life when you
Yeah.
think you know what something is, and then you finally watch it and you're like, dude, I was wrong. Like, I thought we were gonna enjoy this movie, but I thought it was gonna be all top surface. There's layers here. It's saying something. It clearly knows what it's saying, and it's putting it out there. So, where the first movie I think was more presented about what if God was or man was playing God, this
Mhm.
one's talking that, taking that, and then the repercussions that come from that, and not just that, but like society as a whole and how we perceive each other. I just thought it was really brilliant, and I really liked it. So even though it only gets a 4 for me, I still think it was really well done. What about you guys?
Um, my hot take is a little less serious. If it was winter,
Mm.
Frankenstein lives happily ever after because it'd be too cold to keep that damn door open, and those hunters wouldn't have just been like, "What's going on in here?"
That's a true statement as he's out there whistling while he works. What about you, Dave?
I don't think I have one offhand.
Um, basically, that's Bride of Frankenstein in a nutshell. And man, Will, I think we're off and running in 1935. I really enjoyed that. I'm curious if the rest of our movies are going to get this kind of 4 or higher. That always seems to be the goal. If we can get a 4 or higher on everything, we tend to find our 3.5s, but they exist and they need to be watched too. So, what's on the docket for us, Will, for the future?
Yeah, so coming up next, we're doing a double feature. We're going to watch The Informer by John Ford. This is the film where we have a former IRA soldier kind of turns informer on his buddy in order to escape Ireland. And this one's got 6 nominations and 4 Oscars. So this is a pretty big film from this year.
Victor, I
And
forget his last name, won the Best Actor award for this one, so
yeah,
that's something that excites
Vic,
me.
Victor McLaughlin is
Okay,
the guy who wins Best Actor. So
McLovin.
uh, McLaughlin, not McLovin.
Uh,
And then we're going to watch it alongside The 39 Steps by Alfred
mm.
Hitchcock, starring Robert Donat and Madeline Carroll. This one's essentially just a spy thriller, and I think have some pretty clear ties to each other, both kind of taking place in Great Britain. So it should be fun to kind of see Alfred Hitchcock's supposedly best British film. So.
Dave, you know anything about either one of those movies, specifically 39 Steps?
I saw it a long time ago. I don't remember a lot about it. Um, I do know that it does actually have a payoff with 39 steps.
Really?
There is
Okay.
something actually, yeah, that comes back with that.
Oh,
But
interesting. Is it fair to say that you've walked 39 steps between the last time you've seen this movie?
absolutely.
Okay. There you
Times a
have it.
lot.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Uh,
39 Steps, the original AA, and then everyone got lazy.
yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Um, that's kind of like that scene from the Book of Life or whatever that is. Where he's like, I have the 15
Oh,
the
yeah.
10 commandments. Monty Python there. Anyways, as always, where you guys can catch us, you guys know where you can find us. We're on TikTok, Spotify, everywhere you can find us. That's social media. Dave, this is your opportunity. Tell them about Journey with the Cinephile and a depth dive with depth. Tell us about where they can find you.
Yep, kind of the same way you were just saying there. You probably can find my stuff everywhere that podcasts or videos and stuff like that are listed. Yep, Journey with a Cinephile is me covering mostly just the horror stuff that I do, but I also do a little bit of genre if it's a little bit darker and not necessarily falling into that. And then Depp Dive is my wife's favorite actor is Johnny Depp, so we literally have went back to watch all of his feature films. So as of recently, we just watched Sweeney Todd, so we have Public Enemies up next. So,
Question: when you get to this crazy documentary he was a part of where him and Amber Heard are
mhm.
at this trial, I don't know, are you guys gonna watch that piece of work and do a breakdown of that? Because he hasn't made any movies since in a while, so you guys are coming towards the end of his catalog.
Jamie watched it when it like first came out. Like she would put it on while she was like cooking or just doing just like random things, like random chores and stuff. So she's a little bit more versed in it than I am. We've actually talked about it. We haven't got there yet, so we don't know what we're gonna do because we've been skipping documentaries or like there's a couple movies where he just has a very short kind of cameo that
Cameo.
we're not gonna do those ones. So we're not sure what we're gonna do yet there because I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, just be careful because I heard there's a British documentary that exists that
From
showcases
her,
the
like
from her
her side,
perspective.
yeah.
Yeah, because she apparently did much better when they were in the foreign courts, and he looks
Hmm.
much worse. In
Yeah.
American courts, he looks much better, and she looks much worse. So just the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
So
that one, that documentary is called Have You Heard? So just be on the lookout for that.
yeah, see there, that's the type of
Yeah.
retitling we were looking for. Will uh, Franken stew. Uh, anyways, you guys know where to find us. As always, do what you got to do and keep watching movies. We'll see you on down the road.
See you.